So,
As long as
but then my voice.
Yeah, let's kick off.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce you to a powerhouse of comedy, a gifted writer and talented actress, Diona Doherty. Hailing from Derry, Diona has carved out a remarkable career in the entertainment industry, bringing laughter and sharp wit to audiences across the UK and beyond. Diona is an alumnus of Queen's, having studied and earned her degree in drama here a few years ago. You may recognise her from BBC Northern Ireland's Soft Border Patrol, where comedic timing and natural charisma shone through. It was a personal favourite show of mine, I have to say. She also made a memorable appearance in Derry Girls, playing a Ukrainian student who was accused of being a hooker, and has been a regular panellist on the Blame Game since 2021. Beyond television, Diona has made waves in the world of live comedy, competing in the BBC New Comedy Award in 2021 and making it to the Northern Irish final. Her writing talents have also been showcased in critically acclaimed plays such as Bridesmaids of Northern Ireland, The Hen Do and Sunny Side Up. She's currently touring with her stand-up comedy show Get Your Pink Back and is a host of the Girls Group Chat podcast. So on behalf of...
Don't pretend you don't listen to it.
I've actually heard some fucking brilliant clips, to be fair. So on behalf of Litterific, I'd like to say thank you. Diona, you're very welcome to the society, and thank you very much. So, pass you over to Jess.
Thank you so much.
Do you have anything to add to that little introduction there?
That, you just listed my CV there, that was perfect. That was great. Yeah, I did. I went to Queen's, it feels like a long time ago that I went here, and it has changed so much, like it's had such a facelift. But I was mostly over there, and as you said, I did study drama, not a real degree, and it was a degree, but it doesn't really count, does it? I think the drama students would say it does count. We were over there in the Brian Frill most of the time, and I remember on one of my first lessons in drama here, David Grant, is David Grant still here? No? Anyway.
Any of us are filmmakers.
Oh, okay. He was here anyway, but one of the first exercises in drama that I got here was to be a bag of sand. And, no, seriously, right? And it has stuck with me, and I still don't know why, but we had to be a bag of sand for what felt like 4.5 hours. And you would the exercise was that you would gradually be less sand, because out of the bag of sand, some was escaping, and you just got smaller and smaller and smaller. And I remember at the time being like, oh my god, this is such a cool, like, this is how they do it. This is how people become great actors. I was like, this next stop BAFTA, this is how we do it. And now looking back, I just think our tutor wanted to sit down for a while and let us just I think he was like, just let them do that for 20 minutes, they'll think they're doing some sort of method acting exercise. So it was really rare. I nearly didn't even study drama. I wanted to do law. That's what I originally wanted to do, because I was really academic in school, and I had like all A stars from GCSEs and A levels, and my school naturally as a grammar school was like, you must do law. Like that's what sort of back then it was like, your options are be a doctor or be a lawyer. And so I was going to do law, but my dad talked me out of it, which is unusual advice for a father to give. Don't do law, go off and study drama. But that's what he did. He was like, I remember my dad going to me, you think being a lawyer is going to be like a scene of Legally Blonde? We're going to be like in a cool wee outfit, and you're going to be like, Your Honor! And it's just going to be like this whole, and I was like, well, that is sort of what it is. And he was like, yeah, but you have to like be a lawyer as well. And I was like, yeah, that's true. But there's such a crossover between law and drama, it's crazy. Like, do you know the Hole in the Wall gang who do that Give My Head piece? They're all lawyers. Every single one of them studied law at Queen's and were practicing lawyers and barristers for like 10 years after they left Queen's, whilst they were filming Give My Head piece. So there is such a crossover, and I don't know, there's probably been studies done it about why there's such a crossover. I mean, it is like a drama, the courtroom, but that is like such a weird crossover. A lot of people who study law go on to be like, do amateur dramatics and stuff as well. It's strange. I got my first acting job when I was at Queen's on a TV show, a non-speaking part in a sketch show, where my character would often just fall off a bus or get thrown down an escalator or something, and the BBC obviously don't want to throw real people off a bus all the time, so they got like a dummy made of me, but it was just like jeans and a jumper stitched together, stuffed with like the stuff from inside of a pillow, and myself, and I don't know if you know Kieran Bartlett, the comedian Kieran Bartlett, they used the same dummy for us both. And I was like, we were both like, we look from, like, when you close one eye, you'll know that's not the same person, do you know what I mean? They just took my wig off my dummy and then threw his off as if he fell off the bus. So that was like my first taste of comedy, and I remember going back into my drama class one day here, purposely going in late and being like, sorry, I've just been off filming a BBC show, sorry, are you all still doing the bag of sand thing, or I've just been off like professionally working, sorry. I had no words, no lines, nothing at all. But I ended up leaving Queen's for 2 years and going studying performing arts somewhere else, because the drama course isn't a vocational acting course, it's a drama course, you know. And I remember on the very first day, the lecturer being like, this is not RADA, you know, this room will not be full of actors. And I was like, I shall show her. And then she was like, it's you know, we're going to create stage managers and lighting designers and people who work in the field of entertainment and all different aspects of it. It's not necessarily going to be a room full of actors. And I remember thinking, oh well, I'd prefer to do something more performance-wise. And I went and done that for 2 years at BMC, but then I did come back because I was like, actually I would prefer to have the degree and have that to fall back on if I ever wanted to go on and teach or whatever. And now looking back, I sort of think that probably was a good way to open a lecture on your first day, of being like, this isn't, you know, not everyone here is going to be an actor or a performer, because it made you realise that like the entertainment world or performance art world is like a massive spectrum, and you can do 1,000,001 things within that. You don't have to be in front of the camera, obviously. Anyway, I've baffled on for a long time. I'll let you have questions to ask me if you want.
Not at all. Love your talks. But so to kind of move on for like drama and acting, there's obviously like your big role in Derry Girls, and that's a series that has like represented Northern Ireland in the film scene across the world, and it's also just brought loads of eyesight and attention to Northern Ireland. So I was just wondering, how did it feel and what was it like to be a part of that, and like did it feel special in any way for you? I
made them put me in that show.
Okay.
And like I remember, so at the Edinburgh Film Festival, which was like September, so it's after, so in August every year there's a comedy festival in Edinburgh called the Edinburgh Fringe Festival for performers, but in the September is the Film and TV Festival, where they release what they've commissioned and what's going to get made over the following year. And I seen this comedy called Derry Girls, and I was like, well, if ever there was something I should be in. And I found out Lisa McGee's email address, contacted her, and I was like, you've just found your lead actress. And I was like, I'm going to have to be in this. And then I first auditioned for the part of Michelle, played by Jamie Lee O'Donnell, and I did a cracking audition. It was really good fun, and I feel like I did a really good one. And immediately they were like, but Diona, you're like massive. You're 5'11". Like, you cannot play 15 years old. You do not look young enough. And they were like, we're so sorry, but we'll try and find something for you. And I remember being so devastated, being like, how often is a TV show going to come around that's set in your hometown, that's about girls, that's comedy, it's like tick, tick, tick. And then I got a call one day or an email one day from Cara Strong, who cast it, and they were like, there's something else here for you. She's that weird Ukrainian girl. It doesn't matter if you don't look 15 or 16, we don't even care what age she is, we're not even mentioning it. She's just coming over from the Children from Chernobyl charity, and she's just going to wreck shit up. And I was like, that'll do me.
Okay.
Yeah. But it was like, I remember the very first day that we shot Derry, so I was there on the very first day of filming anything.
Okay.
And it was the very first scene that was ever shot in Derry Girls was one of my scenes, and we were in the cafe that Rihanna shot her video, her music video one. Do you know that song We Found Love? Do you know she shot that? She shot that in Belfast, yeah. She sat in the cafe with the guy with the blonde hair. Anyway, that's like in the town in Belfast. And so we were in that cafe as well. Like, I love getting this cafe on TV. So we were shooting one of my scenes in there, and I remember we were all just sitting around being like, oh my god, like, this is going to be really special, because it was so funny and the scripts were so brilliant and all of the actors are just unbelievable, that we were just looking around going, this is going to be really exciting and really, really huge. And Anthony Boyle was in that scene as well, the very first scene that we shot, who's now obviously like in Say Nothing and huge West Belfast actor. But I think even for Derry as well, the amount of tourism it's brought to Derry, and the amount of interest, the amount of people that can now understand what we're saying in class, like, that's a thing in itself. Like, even I find if I do stand up outside of this country now, I don't necessarily have to slow down as much as you would have had to have before, because people are hearing our accents all over the world now. And it's funny because, do you know when kids hear play with their toys. They tend to play with their toys in like American accents
Yes.
because they watch YouTube all the time, and they're like, "Hey, bear man," and that's how they play with their toys. They just straight away go into American accents, and I just love the idea now. If there's like wee kids in America that are playing with their toys in Derry accents, do if you're watching Derry, and they're like, "Oh, man!" Like I just think that would be class.
So you went in with the view of being Derry girls, and you came out being Ukrainian girl.
Yeah, and I always asked, it's so weird, you play Ukrainian. I was like, yeah, but that's just the acting world, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was on a TransLink train into Belfast one time, and it was just after Dairy Girls had come out, the first series, and a man came over to me, and he was all, "Do you need directions anywhere?" And I was like, "I'm from here," and he was all, "Whoa," like he thought I was Ukrainian.
So did it take long to master the accent?
No, not at all. It's a terrible accent. No, I did some dialect work with a coach because they didn't want me to sound Russian, because Russian and Ukrainian obviously
Yes.
are different places,
Yes.
apparently. So I just had to learn the difference between those. Don't ask me what the difference is now because I can't remember, but there are differences.
Okay. Well, you were kind of just speaking there about how Derry has kind of got more recognition from that, and how you get understood now in your shows worldwide, and the Americans playing with their toys in the Derry accent. So I was kind of just wondering, why do you think Derry Girls like struck a global chord?
I think because the themes within it are so universal. And what was gorgeous about Dairy Girls is that whilst the backdrop was of the Troubles, these 5 like innocent teenagers had completely different troubles. Their troubles were the things that we experience as teenagers, were like, arguments with friends and not having enough money to go on the ski trip, and having your first kiss, losing your virginity, all those things. That was their troubles. So it was sort of gorgeous to see them just like saunter through their crazy wee lives with all this shitstorm happening in the background that they're not even aware of, which is how they should be protected. So I think the world seeing that, and they're like, that's crazy that they live in this really dangerous, scary place, but yet they've remained such innocence, and I think on top of that, it's so funny. You can't deny it, whether you need to watch it with the subtitles on at the start to get the hang of it, and then you can rewatch it then or something to hear the jokes a second time. Undeniably, it has a brilliant writer and brilliant performers and great direction, and you can't, that's universal.
Yeah. So from that idea that the Troubles was going on at the time the show was set, and you have these girls that are just completely just kind of happy or going through their own thing, their own lives. So do you think just watching that changed the perception that the world had on Northern Ireland?
I think, I suppose it did, because I suppose a looking in view would have been that it was just dangerous. And I even remember moving from Derry to Belfast at 18, and my dad saying to me, viewing Belfast as like the bigger city than Derry, that it would be more dangerous for me to live in as a young student. And he was like, "Don't be saying your surname anywhere, they'll immediately assume you're Catholic," and he was like, "If you rang a taxi, use somebody else's name, like stick to yourselves." And he thought that I was going to be moving to a place that was rife with sectarianism and it would be like, a dangerous place. And it wasn't. I remember moving to Belfast and ringing my dad going, "I think I'm safer down here than," you know what I mean? I thought it's great. So I think it's that as well. That look in would be like, oh, it's a scary, dangerous place. People are dying. There's a war, and yet then to watch the lovely innocence and the brilliantly funny moments that these young teenagers all share probably made them forget about all that madness that was going on in the background.
Yep. And I suppose just the last question I'll have on Dairy Girls for now is just that the show, obviously, it opened up some great doors for some local actors and creators. So just how did it feel to kind of be a part of that and watch that happening, and just watch Northern Ireland enter the wider film world?
It was really weird to hear people who sound like me speaking at the BAFTAs and stuff. Do you know what about people who have unashamedly Derry accents as well? Like Saoirse Monica Jackson has one of the most Derry accents ever. She's really strong Derry, and I remember her saying before, I don't need to slow down for people to understand me. You just need to listen harder, because there is that weird thing about people from here, especially in the world of entertainment, feel like we're not we're not welcomed in the rest of the UK or in the rest of the world because our accent is too difficult to understand, and that's just because people growing up have not been exposed to our accent enough, and it's just exposure therapy. The more they hear it, the easier it'll be to understand, because we listen to theirs all the bloody time, you know what I mean? And we've no problem understanding all of the regions throughout England, Scotland, Wales, America, everywhere. And so it's about time that's reciprocated.
Yeah. So just to, I'd say, move on to a bit of a different topic, but the blame game.
Mm-hmm.
It was, a great way to kind of have comedy play a role in, public discourse and, keep people engaged and informed, on current events. So I was just wondering, how did you prepare for such, a fast-paced and different style of show?
The blame game is the only time of year that I watch the news. Because I have to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then, because I could get a crash course before we start. The blame game's a funny one because obviously it's a political, satirical show. It's a topical comedy panel show. So every week the way it works is Monday to Thursday we read about 100 news stories, and we sort of section them into like 4 categories, and we think, there's been 7 or 8 or 10 stories this week about politics, so there's been a number of stories about climate change, maybe there's a COP going on or something, and then there's loads of stories about art. There's a Van Gogh story, there's a story about the Louvre, there's like loads of stories, and so we can, each of us panelists lead a section. So like whenever we go to that section of like the stories we've collectively put together, one of the comedians knows that's my section, I start the jokes on this bit. So it's planned, like we write loads of the material beforehand. But it's funny because we'll be sitting in our like editorial meeting the day before we shoot, and we decide who's going to lead each section, and it's always the case where we're like, there's stuff happening with Casement Park and the Euros are on. Okay, Neil Delamere, big sports guy, that's obviously going to you. You'll do funny stuff on the football, and then there's a Van Gogh story, there's a Banksy story, there's lots of stuff about art. Colin Murphy, you're big into art, you do that there. Tim, there's loads of stuff about Stormont, about there's lots of stuff about whatever. Say Nothing's on. It's about the Troubles, Good Friday Agreement. You had that. Would you take the goat that broke into Eurospar in Dromore? Like, my stuff is like the silliest, weirdest, stupidest stuff within it. And when I joined the blame game, immediately I had imposter syndrome. It'd been running for like 18 years. It was always a panel of straight white Catholic men the entire time. And then I joined and I was like, am I a box ticker? I don't know, but I'm here. I'm just gonna and so immediately I was like, I'm the only woman that's ever been on the show ever as a permanent panelist. And I'm much younger than them, and I have much less political awareness than they do, and their stand-up is political and mine isn't. Yeah. And I was like, God, why am I here? Like, I always felt like such imposter syndrome. And then it took me a few series to really realise it's okay to talk about the goat in the Eurospar and Dromore. People want to hear about that shit too. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, if you can make it funny, you can make it funny. So whilst we try and cover all this, make light, like this country does brilliantly, we deal with all of our troubles and our heartache and our difficult times through humour better than anywhere in the world, I think. And that show highlights that. But it's funny is like, it just took me such a long time when I was on it to figure out why, because at the start I would try and do more political stuff, and I was just writing jokes in other people's voices, and then that doesn't work, so it took me a while to sort of find my place.
Yeah. And why do you think that like humour and satire has such an effective way of keeping people engaged and informed on current affairs?
I mean, it's like magic, honestly, because like I even use it in a lot of my plays. Like I did a play last year called Sunny Side Up, and it was a one-woman dark comedy. I did in the Lyric Theatre, and it was about my experience of going through IVF to have my kids. And the best formula I find to make people remember something is to make them feel 2 opposing emotions really quickly together. So if you like deliver something that makes them really think, or that's sad, or that's something that provokes thought, and then immediately after you give them a laugh, that moment is like magic in them, and they really remember that. And I think that really helps on panel shows too. It's like the whole throwing people off, so they think something's going this way, and then you throw something on that takes them that way, and they go, oh shit, and then they remember that really well, and I think that really helps. And we do that here. It's dark humour, you know, and we do that here so well, I think, to deal with everything. It's, I was actually talking recently with one of the girls on my podcast about other countries don't do that as well. They don't do dry wit as well, and they don't do sarcasm usually at all. So when we're sarcastic, they're like, oh my god, really? And you're all, no, don't please, that was not what I meant. You know, they don't get it. But we use it here as a coping mechanism.
Yeah. So do you ever feel like pressure balancing that humour and sensitive topics?
Aye, and as a comedian, you've no idea where the line is. And I'm also married to a comedian, so there's no line in our house. And all of the time, I have to remind myself when I'm in groups of people that aren't comedians that you can't say some things that we're just like, we take the jokes too far. There is nothing more explicit and freeing than being in the green room at a comedy club, because we just say whatever we want to each other, and you almost get to like dump all the bad thoughts out of your head and then go back into the world again for like, you go on and go, well, here's all the bad shit I wanted to say today, blah, and then you leave and go back to normal life again. It's like therapy, but you do have to tread the line, especially whenever you speak, like I speak so openly about stuff like IVF and having my kids through that way, that I remember the first time like going through IVF and paying for it, and it's extortionate, and being like, I'm gonna make this money back, I'm gonna write about this and talk about it on stage and make a play about it, and I'm gonna make people buy tickets to come see it, and I'm gonna pay for my kids through that. And therefore it was like a necessity to make jokes out of something that was such a sensitive topic. And I also think you've absolute license to make jokes out of something if you've experienced it and you've lived it, you know, like you can literally say what you want about it. So sometimes it's great having gone through a bit of trauma, because you're like, why? Bagsy'd been able to do jokes on that now.
I suppose just kind of on the topic of, you know, comedy shows, you have your own, Get Your Pink Back. So I was just wondering, could you tell us about your tour and what inspired the theme of it?
So I saw a video online last year, and it was a content creator who'd made a video about flamingos, and it's this fact about flamingos that when they have kids, whether they're the mums or the dads, they drain from their pink colour to a pale white. And that's a fact, that's what happens to them all, just because like they give their wee chicks their nutrients and their energy and their money, I don't know what, they're just drained, they're shattered, and they go white, and you see white flamingos and you go, oh, you're postpartum, you've literally just had kids. And as their wee chicks get bigger and get more independent, the mum and dad flamingos get their pink colour back. And I remember being like, that is such a beautiful analogy to where I'm at in my life. My kids are almost 2 and 4, and after having them, I had postnatal depression for about a year and a half after having my daughter, and simultaneously was doing the blame game and doing my first tour and doing stand-up and having to make people laugh all the time whilst going home and feeling like my world had shattered because I didn't know what I was doing as a first-time mum. And so I just wanted to talk more about on stage about how I got past that and was able to like get my pink back and be me again and figure out who I was post-motherhood, because I do think it's something that completely changes who you are forever. Not always for a good way, in a good way either, but you are, it's like you don't prepare for it, but you have to then go, oh well, there, she's dead, so I'll have to create a new person now and be this new person. So the show is, I promise, funny. None of that sounded like it would be funny, but it's stories about who I was growing up, who I was after having kids, and how I'm going to try and become the new me and get my pink back.
I didn't realise that was what it was.
Isn't it a fascinating fact about flamingos? And it's true, yeah.
That's lovely. I've kind of looked at the comedy show now in a whole different way.
It's very smart.
Yeah. So you've just spoken about, you know, so you've gone to loads of different countries, or not loads of different countries, but you've been all around the UK.
Loads.
You've been all around the UK doing this show, and you've kind of spoken about, you know, being from Derry and all that doing this show. So how have you felt the audience response has been?
Do you know when you go to Scotland, you may as well be in another part of Belfast. It's the humour is exactly the same. They've no problem following everything you're saying. Their slang words for everything are very similar. It is like just being in Belfast, no matter what part of Scotland you go to. When you go to England, it's not the same. I feel like you genuinely, you know, you do have to mind things a wee bit. Like it's just like maybe slow down a bit. But again, I have been very careful with this tour to make sure that I'm not doing, it's funny because it's local stuff, so there's nothing in my show that's funny because the punchline's Lauren, you know what I mean? So I'm not going to then go to like Liverpool and they'll be like, where's Lauren? You know what I mean? You can't. So you have to write smart if you want to gig outside of Northern Ireland. Your punchline can't be Lauren.
Yeah. So does like performing live give you something that like, you know, being on TV or being on a screen wouldn't?
Being on TV is really boring.
Yeah.
No, like so boring. Like you've no idea. It is actually awful. It is not. It's not like anything after the first take of something is pure acting. You know, the first take of something that you get to do is like, that's the exciting, like, oh, we can like, but after that you're like mechanical. You're like, oh, we know, we're supposed to walk over there, were we? And like you just become stupid too. You're like, well, how do I answer the phone? Like it becomes really bizarre. But when you're on stage, you do the whole life of the character in that time that you're on it. You get to live their whole life of what we see of it. You get to live the whole journey. Like, did anyone watch Adolescence recently? And it was like the one take thing.
Yeah.
And those actors in interviews since have said they would love to shoot like that in every single show from now on, because it's like a play.
Yeah.
Where you get to when you have to like be up here with a certain emotion at some point, you get to build up to it, rather than like eating your sandwich and someone going, action, you're all, he's dead. And you know, when you just have to like immediately get into that, and you're like, it's so difficult to do that. But if you get to build up to it, and it's the same like when you do a live play, it's unbelievable. It just doesn't pay as well. Not transparency, TV pays better. But with stand-up, I transitioned more into stand-up post-pandemic than acting, because I felt like I could take control of that in my career better than in the world of acting. There was gatekeepers. You know, there's a lot of people who can stop you getting a part, or you know, it's up to a lot of other people to make decisions about whether or not you get to work. Whereas in stand-up, you can just go to clubs any night of the week and just gig. You know, you're sort of you're your own boss. And for me, that was a healthier mental health choice to make, where I was like, no, I can be in charge of that, and I can get out of that what I put into that, rather than somebody going, you're too tall. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I suppose just how did then just having that show bring like a more personal aspect to it compared to your other work?
Do you mean get your pink back?
Yeah.
Well, all my stuff's pretty personal, I suppose. I just write about exactly what I know. Like my first play that I wrote, Bridesmaids of Northern Ireland, was like, had like a loose theme of like the Bridesmaids movie, where the two bridesmaids are like at each other in the lead up to the bride's wedding. But all of the stuff in it was all my personal stuff. Like I was maid of honor. How I got into stand-up was I was a maid of honor at my best friend's wedding, and I did a speech. And my husband came over to me and was all, that's stand-up, you did 10 minutes of stuff that you wrote and people laughed. And I was like, oh my god, that's mad, I'll just do that in the pavilion next week. It was weird in the pavilion because they didn't know my friend that I was talking about the whole time, so they were like, this doesn't make sense to us. But I was like, oh, that's actually a great point. But there were bits from that wedding that I put into my play. And I remember like doing the play going, I hope she doesn't come, because I've written about her wedding in this show. So all the things that I do is all the stuff, you know, I do write about my own personal experience. And I suppose, you know, unless you're a one-liner comedian who writes jokes like set up on a punchline, you tend to rely on your personal experience, and it's up to you how much you give away. Like sometimes you're like, okay, I'm not going to talk about that in public, or I'm not going to talk about that on stage, I'm going to keep that just private. And then you need to write material and you're like, shit, I've got nothing to write about it, that's going. I'll just talk about that. So yeah, I think obviously as a comedian you have to wear your heart on your sleeve, or as a writer you have to be able to go, do you know what, the best stuff that I like to watch is when people are telling you their own personal experiences of something and their perspective on something. So I suppose you have to be personal in all aspects of that.
Yeah. I suppose just you think, kind of speaking about your friendships and stuff there, it's just made me want to ask a few questions about your podcast, The Girls Group Chat. So you've worked alongside some really influential and amazing women, and I was just wondering, how did that kind of collective group come together?
Me, I'm the mastermind. I've had a few podcasts before, and over the past sort of few months before we started this podcast, I had just become more aware that the podcast world here is really male dominated, especially the comedy podcast world. It is all guys, and which is fine, they're all my mates, but like there was just a lot of guys, and I was like, there's no podcast that feels like you're listening into a group of girls, like a group of mates, you know, like the group chat and the things you would talk about in the group chat. And you know, I sort of thought who would be great to put together for this, and I wanted women who not only could provide comic relief for escapism, I wanted the podcast to be something that you could, you know, go out for a run listening to, or clean the house listening to, or ignore your kids listening to, whatever you want to do. But also that there would be people on there who have really great stories to tell. And like Olivia McVeigh, who's on the podcast, is a massive ambassador and does a lot of work for people who have alopecia. She suffers from alopecia. She does these amazing wig workshops for women all around the UK who have lost their confidence after having lost their hair. And she does a lot of charity work and volunteer work, and she's hilarious. So she's such an inspiration. She was on the BBC 100 Top Women, you should get her in, last year. And she came to my attention because she was one of our stories on the Blame Game one week. And I was reading going, who the hell is this girl? She's like an inspiration. And then that made me familiar about who she was. Jordan Arnold, who I know you've had in here before, she has done a whole host of stuff. Like she recently has been diagnosed with ADHD, and she also did like bodybuilding competitions and like all these, like she's been a makeup artist and a radio presenter and a whole host of things. Has had many different seasons to her career. And Shannon Mitchell also went through like a very public, crazy, dramatic weight loss a few years ago, and has built a massive following online of people who view her as like their best mate. And I was looking at all these girls going, these are the Avengers that I want to put together, who people will be able to listen to and enjoy the crack with, but also they have real depth to their stories and have 2 cents to offer that's worth listening to.
Yeah. So I think like you've really just described the girls there as like, you know, they're funny, they're smart, they're supportive, and like how does it feel to just be a part of that group, like when they're so positive?
It's great. Like we have a completely different dynamic, and that's what I said. That's what I'm saying to you about, like, because I'm the only comedian in the group as well, and they're such an easy audience. It's brilliant. Because I'm used to doing podcasts with other comedians where it's like everyone's trying to make each other laugh, and it's like a harder audience. And then I'm with the girls, and I'm the only one trying to make everyone laugh, and I'm all, this is great. Like, this is easy, you know. But they're all the busiest women I've ever met, all have 1,000,001 things going on, so hardworking and so ambitious. And we really want to make this podcast like a community of people. Like we're working on something at the minute where there will be like girls group chat forums for people who enjoy the podcast, A, but B, can fit into different categories. One being girls group chat mums, another one being girls group chat hair and beauty lovers, other ones girls group chat single ladies for nights out, or, you know, like, so you can meet other like-minded people, or you can get advice. And so we wanted to build like a community of really supportive women who can network with each other. I know after having kids, where you're like, you don't know how to make friends anymore, your social interactions are different because you're usually thinking about, you know, like, have they had everything today, and are they, like, you're all thinking about all your kids' stuff. So we just wanted to build a community of supportive women who could network with each other, and that was one of our main goals that we're continuing to work on.
Yeah, so I know just your podcast, it does represent some like very like real and relatable women, and just how important is it for you guys to just give that message like of just real and relatable life for women?
Yeah, I think so. We did it. Our second or third episode went boogaloo and got like over 100,000 streams in the first week, and it was like crazy numbers for a podcast from here. And we were like trending #1 in the UK with that episode, and we were like, what the hell's going on? And we realised that in that episode, the theme was people saying something to you that stuck with you and ruined your confidence with that specific thing. And we hadn't discussed what we would chat about before, but it turned out that each of us, all of the things that we brought to the table were all that somebody had said something about our physical appearance at one stage or another when we were younger. And you could never quite shake that off 15, 20 years later. And I was like, isn't it so sad that the four of us are women, and all of the things that we're saying are all about our physical appearance? Because a lot of the time, as women, that is what you're valued as, is what you look like, or, you know, your body, your face, your hair, whatever, and that is your value a lot of the times to a lot of other people. And I was like, it's quite sad that that is exactly what we've all been, all of our insecurities are mostly physical. And that episode, I think, sort of soared figures wise, and that brought a lot of listeners to us because they felt like we were all women who were working in media and all seemingly doing well in different things, and like all the other girls are so beautiful, and it was like, oh god, but they have the same insecurities as I do, you know.
I think you were just speaking at the start on your podcast, and you were talking about how, you know, the podcast world is very like male dominated, especially like the kind of the comedy side. So I was just wondering, do you feel is there like a shift happening for women in comedy, like particularly in Northern Ireland?
Yes and no. Yes, as in there's lots more women doing comedy now, like lots more women doing stand-up, which is brilliant. No, as in there's still only a small amount of us getting the bigger opportunities, and 30% of panel show panelists are women, so that's still not equal. I'm on a panel show where there's 3 men and me, and then a lot of the weeks the guest is a man, so there's usually there's 20% of us as a woman, and it's only me, you know, and that isn't good enough either. And it's still this bizarre thing, I get asked all the time, what's it like at a woman in comedy, and are women funny, and these sort of silly questions, and you're like, we're still doing this, are we? But it's still a thing, because, you know, if you look into the audiences of a comedian from here, probably from anywhere, during their tour shows, it is like such a 50-50, or it's a mix of all genders. When you look into a female comedian's audience, it is 99% women, and it's bizarre. And it's strange, because and through listening to audience members, a lot of men do feel like they wouldn't relate to the female comedian on stage, because obviously she's going to talk the whole time about her period. Okay. Do you know what I mean? Or giving birth or something that I'm certainly not going to be able to relate to. But weirdly, a female in it as an audience member would never have that thought. She would never go, oh well, I can't relate to your man up there talking about getting the snip, so I'm not going to the show. You know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't think like that as a female and an audience member, but men do think like that. I'm going to ask the guys in the room now, as a wee bit of market research. Have you ever been to Sleet Live stand-up?
Yeah.
Have you been to someone, who have you been to see?
Well, I've seen Donohue and Tim McGarry, and then recently I saw Kevin Hart.
All guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you go to their actual tour shows?
Yeah.
Okay, so you bought tickets to 3 guys. Who's your favourite female comedian? That's too long. That's too long. Catherine Ryan, she's my favourite as well. Yeah. But she was in Belfast 2 weeks ago doing her tour show. Perfect opportunity. I went to see her in the waterfront. Do you know what I mean? That's not your fault at all. That's just the mindset, and it's bizarre, and I don't even know if you would know that's what happened. You probably wouldn't even realise. I've been to see 3 tour shows that are all men and none of them women, and yet the person I think's my favourite comedian was the waterfront maybe 10 days ago, you know. Have you been to stand-up comedy?
I have, but I've only been to...
The clubs?
Yeah.
Have you guys ever been to a tour show? No. Okay, well, you're all off. You all get off then. You're in trouble. No. But that's generally what happens, is like men and women will all go see. Have you guys been to see comedians before in tour show?
I think she just saw you.
Oh, you just see me?
So, like at Libraries, yeah.
Oh, okay, in a club, yeah. But I think a lot of women go see women and men just go see women, and it's still something that absolutely baffles me. I get messages all the time from people going, "Oh, I was about to book tickets to your tour show," but it's obviously just like it's a girl's thing, isn't it? Like, if my husband wouldn't want to go, so should I just book with my friend? And I'm like, why wouldn't your husband want to go? It's just an hour of stand-up. I'm not gonna, you know. It's bizarre. But not all my male counterparts here never receive a message from a woman going like, "Are you going to talk about beer and football the whole time?" You know, like, I just can't figure it out.
Yeah, I suppose on a little bit of a brighter note, I'll just ask 2 or 3 more questions before I open up to the floor, and you can just reflect on yourself. But what's one moment in your career path so far that's kind of affirmed for you that you're on the right path?
I think possibly being offered the Blame Game. I was only doing stand-up about 1.5 years when I got the Blame Game, and until this year, every single series I've done, I've either been pregnant or had a baby 2 weeks ago. It was always like the 4 or 5 seasons of just like all that, and I was still able to do it during like having a newborn or being heavily pregnant with a toddler, and you know, was still able to do it. And I thought, no, I can definitely really do this, you know. And also it just makes me so much happier, you know, being able to do stand-up, I think, because it's like it's a dream job, wise up, do you know what I mean? Get to stand and tell jokes, that's stupid, isn't it? That's a stupid job to have. So I think possibly, being on the Blame Game.
So you've been on the Blame Game, which is, you know, a great achievement, but down the line, is there any dream role or a project you want to work on?
Well, I'm in the new series of Blue Lights, which is very exciting, and potentially in the one after that as well. And that's like, I think the role I play in that is my dream role. It's very cool, can't really talk about it, but but yeah, it's that is the part. Should it go on to do more, is definitely like a dream part. I always wanted to play full, like, just badass, in charge of the room, like anything Gillian Anderson gets to play. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is important, that sort of part. And it's so I always wanted to do this is the thing as well. I always wanted to prove myself as a dramatic actor. It was like I want to be in dramas, I want to be in police dramas, I want to be like all this like just like intense shows. And then they just kept after me, like Soft Border Patrol and all, and I was like, why I keep getting comedy? And then I just had to lean in, going, okay, maybe I just lean into the comedy then, and then the other stuff will maybe come down the line. And the more dramatic stuff is starting to come in now, which now I don't feel the need to prove myself in that anymore. It's like, it's okay, but yeah, I think I always wanted to like lead like a police drama or something quite intense.
So I think just the last question from me here is just, would you have any advice for young creative people in Northern Ireland who want to make it into the comedy world or media?
If an audience doesn't find you funny, that doesn't mean you're not funny. You're just in front of the wrong audience. Let the other audience find you. So don't change your style because you had a crap gig and people didn't laugh. Just keep going, and then the right people will find you.
Okay.
And also for young girls, which is something I wish I had been told when I was younger, it's okay to be funny. Because when I was a young teenager growing up, all the guys would horseplay and monkey around and be really funny, and the girls would stand there like ornaments. And I was an ornament, and whilst I was dying to crack jokes and be funny, but it just wasn't the etiquette of like 13-year-old girls. You were like, no, I've got makeup on and all. So I just wish I could go back and go, no, just muck in, be funny, it's fine.
Really grateful, helpful advice. Any questions from the floor?
Hiya.
Hi. Your podcast was making me think earlier about the early like Call Her Daddy podcast and how like, well, if anyone listens to Call Her Daddy, I just outed myself. But how do you think like the way Alex Cooper sprung into success with her and her partner, and obviously they're no longer together anymore for the podcast? How do you think like that can translate for the podcast here to go, for your podcast specifically, to go kind of like global and like impact not just women in like Northern Ireland, the UK, but also like women in the US and just women internationally?
Do you mean for us as hosts or for like our listeners?
Probably listeners, but like how do you think you can engage like a more global audience the way like Call Her Daddy for some reason has? Like, well, I love it, so I don't know.
No, I know what you mean, but I think a really big help is to be American. You just have a bigger audience, and we're more receptive to that voice because we ingest a lot of American stuff. Where are you from?
I'm from Kentucky.
You're from Kentucky. You have a beautiful accent, by the way.
Thank you.
And I think that does help online. You know, people immediately recognise those accents, and I think that is a major, just a difficulty sometimes for people to overcome hearing regional accents. But the topics that we speak about are the same. They're the same universal things that women experience, and the same, same girl chat, the things that are in any sort of like girls podcast. But we've teamed up with Spotify. Spotify got in touch with us after our second episode because we had like one of the biggest first episode launches they've seen from like a female podcast in the UK, and they were like, oh, we'd love to work with these. So immediately we worked on the Spotify Creators Program, which meant that we were able to be supported by Spotify, and they would help promote our podcast. And when that happens, it just reaches a wider audience. So it actually isn't more about the content, it's more about people in the background going and just letting people have the high visibility. They're giving us a billboard in Leicester Square in June as well that we're going to go over and visit and see. So I do think it's about the algorithm and people believing in you, I suppose.
So we had William Crawley came and spoke to us a few months ago, the BBC journalist, and he made a comparison that I'd never really thought of before between, because he was in the Debating Society at Queen's, between debating societies and like drama societies and things like that, in terms of building confidence, speaking ability, like the soft skills that you have that you can build through those sort of outlets in later life. So I was just sort of wondering whether drama was sort of an outlet in terms of building confidence when you're sort of growing up.
I didn't do hardly any drama growing up because we'd no money. And when you grow up in a working class household living in a council estate, you can't go to drama groups. You'll get battered in the street. No, it was more just my mum and dad couldn't send me to groups. Our school didn't have a drama group. It was only whenever I was a teenager and was doing drama in saying that there, I would have done like faces and poems at the face, and I was dancing in as many era. I'd done plays in front of my whole family on Christmas Day in the living room, and I've done my own means of performance, but we just couldn't afford to put me into classes. So that wasn't an outlet for me growing up just because of that working class barrier. And then as a teenager, when I started studying drama in school, I had a brilliant drama teacher who was just like very supportive and very fun, and sort of opened the door into like amateur dramatics that you still have to pay for. Like you still have to pay to go to amateur dramatics. You have to pay like £7 or £8 or whatever it is to go each week, because the people who are there taking it need paid, the room that you're rehearsing on needs paid. And that's when I was like, okay, I'll get a part-time job and I can pay to go do that sort of stuff myself. And then I did a couple of plays as a teenager, horrifically in the background, no lines, pretending to be a dancer, can't dance, stuff like that. And so it only really became an outlet for me as a teenager, but it was only properly when I came here at like 18 years old, discovered the internet. That was great fun. And was able to like be part of like societies and the main thing for me when I moved to Queen's in my first year, I formed a comedy sketch group with 9 other people, and we would we would write and perform we call Friday Night Therapy, which is basically a rip-off of Saturday Night Live. We were unashamed. They'd be like, it's a complete rip-off, a comedian will host it, we will do sketches and somebody will sing at the end. Like, it's literally the same thing. And we did it in the Black Box like once every 2 months maybe, and we met up every week ourselves in our living rooms and wrote and performed and rehearsed these sketches. And that was really the first sort of like, I've properly got a creative space and a creative outlet. This is before like even having social media where it's like a creative outlet for people. So to answer your question, no growing up, because there's a real barrier when you don't have money to pay for any of those things.
Hello, Diona. I've got the dairy jersey just to represent.
Mine's in the car.
Do you think there kind of exists in Derry, but also like generally, probably in Northern Ireland and throughout the UK, but it's maybe more of a Derry and Northern Ireland thing, where it's like almost something that holds people back. They don't want to do too much because they don't want to be kind of maybe ostracised or be different from the crowd. I think that's something that exists in the world of entertainment and drama. Well,
what you're talking about is Catholic guilt.
It may be.
You know, where it's like, you know, don't draw any attention to yourself. People might see the skeletons in your cupboard. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a massive... I see a lot of people who do social media as their job, and one of the main things they say was that the moment they stopped giving a shit about what their peers thought about what they were putting up, and they started thinking about a wider audience, that they were able to do that more for a job. Because if you keep caring about what other people think of your stuff, then it's gonna just be a vicious cycle. I'm still guilty of it. I was literally talking today with another comedian, because we're both doing a social media campaign soon, and we were discussing with each other how much we've charged for it. And he told me what he charged, and I was all, God, I charged much less than that. And then he was like, but I don't really want to do it, because all the other comedians are going to rip their shit at me. And I was like, we're still doing that. We're still worried that what everyone else will think when we're just trying to earn a living and just do your jobs, you know. I think as well, from specifically in the entertainment industry for comedy, once you build yourself as a comedian and go, I'm funny, if you do something that's remotely related, like, oh, this is supposed to be funny, this is what my version of funny is, then it opens everybody up to go, that's not funny. But it's subjective. It's like turning up at an opera and going, but I only like rock music. You're like, yeah, go see that then. You know what I mean? Get off my page. And it's that sort of thing. It's like you open yourself up to mass amounts of criticism when you've attached comedy to something, or attached any talent to it. When you've went, oh, I'm good at this, it makes people go, it allows people to criticise you for it. Whereas I think generally with stuff like people are like sort of general influencers, they haven't necessarily went, but I'm really good at this specific skill. So therefore they don't really get the same slagging online, because someone can be going, but you're not, you said you were gonna, because they haven't said they were gonna do anything in specific, do you know what I mean? Whereas if we specifically go, I'm gonna be funny, and then someone doesn't find it funny, they get very annoyed. So I do still think, yeah, when you're putting stuff out there, you're very worried about, like, I suppose what everyone else will think, and that is poison.
Any more?
Yes, you're talking about subjectivity and how you shouldn't let the kind of negative opinions of others put you off from comedy. Have you ever had any dealings with hecklers before?
Yeah. Yeah. I had a really bad one, and actually it was in Derry. And I was 8 months pregnant on stage, and 2 hours from home, because I don't live in Derry. And this couple were in the audience, and they were ruining everyone's night. And I was headlining, so I'm on last, so by the time I get on, everyone's hammered. These two are hammered, and they were shouting out all night, and which is fine. Sometimes that's, you know. And by the time I was on, it was actually getting really, like, other people were like, these things are ruining our night. So I had to stop the show and ask security to come and remove them. And as they were being removed, as they walked past me, the guy sort of went like that into me and then went, we'll see you later, in front of the audience. And I had to get escorted to my car afterwards. I am heavily pregnant, and I was like, this is bananas behaviour. But usually you wouldn't get that. But there was a massive surge of audience members at comedy clubs taking massive offence or heckling post Will Smith hitting Chris Rock. Genuinely. It was like, the audience was like, oh, so that's cool, we can now get involved, that's great. So I didn't realise we could do that. So I could shout out now, and, you know, if I don't like it, I can, and that's not funny, like, you're shouting stuff out, you're just being rude, and you're like, come on now, like, you have to, you know, somebody on the stage at a comedy club is just doing their job. The way your plumber would be if they came to your house. You're not going to stand over your plumber and be, no, I wouldn't twist it that way. I wouldn't twist it that way. I would use that other spanner. That spanner's rusty. Like, you wouldn't micromanage it. So for audience members to sit and heckle, sometimes it's a healthy bit of interaction, you know. And as well, the surge of crowd work clips that's online, where everyone thinks that's what stand-up comedy is now, and it's not what stand-up comedy is. Stand-up comedy is pre-written material that you've spent a long time curating and rewriting. And then there's a little bit of crowd interaction that you might do during the night, but those are the clips that go online, because then you don't burn your material, you know. And then a lot of people do come to comedy clubs now going, oh, what will happen for the next 2.5 hours is they're just going to talk to us, and when they're not, we're going to be annoyed, you know. So I can't remember what you asked, but I hope I answered it.
Yeah, thank you.
So, any more questions?
I've got another one. Have you ever seen Laugh Out Loud on Amazon Prime?
Love it.
So you're talking about how your partner's a comedian and how when you go on these podcasts there's a pressure to kind of make other comedians laugh.
Yeah.
How do you think you would get on if you were on Laugh Out Loud?
If does anyone else watch Laugh Out Loud, LOL, so it's basically they put like 10 comedians in a house and they film them, and the idea is if you laugh, you get kicked out. So they all try and make each other laugh, and they're all trying to, like, you know, do silly things. And what usually happens, which is so narcissistic, is usually the comedians make themselves laugh. They get themselves kicked out. They do a funny joke and they're all, oh, and then they have to go because they've made themselves laugh. They rarely make each other laugh. I think I'd be out. I think I'd be out pretty early. It depends on what comedians I'm around, but I get really giddy around some of the comedians. You just become like wee kids.
Your kryptonite.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'd be sitting going like all the bad things I want to say. Do you know, like I've been saving up all day. But yeah, so I don't think I'd fare well in it. I'd love to do it if there was ever one here. There's a Southern Irish one, which is really good, and then there's the English one. But yeah, I'd absolutely love to do it.
Is there any more questions?
That's a quick one. What do you find harder to deal with, the in-person heckling or online criticism?
Online doesn't bother me. It's like water off a duck's back. I get, funnily enough, I remember a few months ago, I was told to my husband, look at this. And I was going to make an Instagram post about, look at all these guys who are like trying to go with me, but it was like 20 comments from men in the past 24 hours who were like being awful to me. And I was like laughing, showing my husband, oh, this is really funny, like all these awful things. And he was like, whoa, what is going on? And I was like, these are just all the past sort of ones in the past day. Because I get lots. And he was like, that's insane. And I was like, no, but like we all get these, like we all get these, don't we? And he was like, no. And I was like, you don't get shit like this every day. And he was like, what? And I'm in a comedian's WhatsApp group with like 20 of the comedians, and I posted in, and they were like, no. They might get like 1 or 2 comments a day being like, this isn't funny. But I get like fully like awful comments, 99% of the time from men who are like, what she needs is a good, or whatever, like this isn't funny, and lots of people tell me I have a big forehead, and I know I'm mad about it. And like just like loads and loads of comments, and then that made me realise that actually as a woman doing comedy, you're a far bigger target, because it's that idea of a man being like, that's so embarrassing, her trying to be funny, or like, you know, you're not allowed to be attractive and funny at the same time. You are if you're a man, but not if you're a woman. So if you're pitting yourself online as funny, you're removing the attractive, and the men are going, oh, you've made me feel weird. And honestly, like most of my comments are from men. Now you'd say not there. I had a female troll this week, but her profile picture was her in a pigeon, so I was like, woman. I'm not bothered. Yeah. So it's the online ones do not bother me whatsoever. I think it's like, because it doesn't mean anything. You can't hurt my feelings. I think because as a comedian you become so desensitized to anything, like you could never hurt my feelings. You could literally insult my kids to my face and I would be like, I don't care. Like I know it's not true, so it doesn't bother me. And the in-person heckling in an audience, sometimes something can come really funny from it. It's not always the end of the world. Like something really funny could happen from it too. So I don't think that people should not talk to comedians at comedy clubs. I just wouldn't punch them. You know.
Well, any more last final questions? Right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We've definitely learned a lot, and as a woman who does want to go into the media, I have been quite inspired as well.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you very much. Yeah?
Just to close, thank you very much, Diona. You gave us a lot to reflect on, some more than others. We're definitely putting seeing a female comedian on the bucket list.
Good.
for this
I'll
year.
send you tickets.
When you put your name up to ask a question, I thought it was going to be an apology day.
I apologise, of course. But on a serious note, I think what you were touching on there was really insightful. How Dairy Girls kind of serves as the only history book of the Troubles that a lot of people will ever read, and how the Blame Game serves as the only form of kind of news that a lot of people will ever watch.
Me too.
And how dramas and stand-up shows and podcasts serve as forums for these more sensitive topics and experiences to be discussed that some people will only ever feel safe discussing through those mediums. So I think the importance of comedy and drama can't be understated. So thank you very much for giving us that perspective
Thank you very much.
giving us something to reflect on. And I'd just like to say, we've had 6 LitTalks this year. Thank you for supporting us the whole year. Thank you very much to Jess as well, our wonderful interviewer, for Calvin and James who have been doing the recording, and of course again to our wonderful guest, Diona. Thank you very much. And on behalf of the Society, as a token of appreciation, I'd like to present you with a honorific pin badge.
That is so cute. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, that is lovely. Thank you so much. I'm going to wear this every day. That's very good. Thank you. Thank you much. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. This has been bombarded with so many people, but thank you very much. Cheers.